Okay, good morning, team. We are throwing it back to the days of COVID when this is how we delivered lecture. In any case, I do apologize. I have no idea what's going on with my internet. It's been out for 2 days. Please send help because how do you live without internet at this point? In any case, okay, we are going to continue on with the digestive system. We left off on Tuesday with some information about just what the digestive system is, all of its parts and components, as well as some of the particular functions that it is important for, what it's necessary for, what it does. And then we started talking about the esophagus and how the esophagus works, and what the point of the esophagus is and all that good fun stuff. Okay, so today we're really going to kind of dive into some of the controlling mechanisms that make digestion happen. And we're going to get into it and we're going to go from there. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. So mechanisms of digestion. When you think about what is the function of digestion, I want you to think movement and secretion. Okay, movement because we have to push stuff down the tube, right? It can't just stay in one spot and everything is fine. No, it has to go through these different parts, go through these different processes in order for us to actually be able to absorb anything and then excrete it. So movement is one, okay? So pushing the bolus, the chyme, depending on where we're at, down the tube, and then also secretion of things that we need in order to break down the food into its component parts, okay? And so if you remember on Tuesday, we talked a little bit about holocrine, merocrine, paracrine, okay? So paracrine is going to be really important. We talked about merocrine, sorry. But now we're going to talk about paracrine. Paracrine is going to be really important for cell-to-cell stimulation, okay? So the actual definition is local secretion stimulated by diffusion of chemicals. So if you look at the picture here, I'm on my old computer, guys, and it doesn't work. And so now I'm like, okay. I'm going to rotate. Hold, please. You guys should see my little setup. I got my microphone and everything, so that way you guys can actually hear me. Here we go. Okay, so if you look at this picture right here, we've got paracrine. So one cell is stimulated, secretes whatever it's going to secrete, and that secretion goes to the next cell, stimulates that cell to secrete the same exact thing. Okay? Then we also have neuronal. Neuron, think nervous system. Okay, this includes short and long autonomic reflexes, so sympathetic and parasympathetic. Okay, if you think about it, this makes sense. We don't think about digesting our food, it just happens. So autonomic reflexes, autonomic nervous system. We're going to talk about these short and long and what they mean and all that good fun stuff. But in any case, you can see from here, okay, the stimulus is coming from nervous tissue, a neuron, not the cell next to it, and not hormones. Okay, so then we have, last but not least, hormonal. Okay, so I don't know if you guys remember, but when we talked about endocrine, I was like, hey, there are some hormones that we're going to talk about when we get to their perspective systems, because in my opinion, it just makes more sense. Okay, so like in the heart, we talked about they're leaving my brain. Sorry. I'm so like kind of flustered because of this whole thing. But in any case, we talked about the natriuretic peptides. Sorry. Thank you. Anyway, and how they help to lower blood pressure. Now we're going to talk about different hormones, and I'll give you guys, there's a lot of them. So I'm going to give you guys the specific ones that'll probably be easiest and best for you to know that help digestive function. Okay. So hormones, please remember, they're secreted into the blood and they help stimulate the digestive tract. Okay, so also we're not to pancreas yet, but please remember pancreas has both endocrine and exocrine. Endocrine was insulin, glucagon. Okay, so those are hormones. Exocrine are going to be all of the enzymes that we need in order to actually chemically digest our food. Okay, so we're going to talk first about the enteric nervous system plexus. It's also called the gut brain. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that term before, but they call it the gut brain. And I'm going to show you a picture because there are so many nerves to the digestive system that it's kind of, they just are like, it's its own little mini brain sort of thing. Okay. So please remember, when you think of functions of the digestive tract, movement and secretion of stuff. Okay. All right. So we've got motor neurons, motor meaning they help move something. Okay. These motor neurons control the smooth muscle contraction and glandular secretion. So does both. Again, we need the muscular contraction to move stuff, glandular secretion for lots of things, which we'll look at. Okay. These neurons are found in what we called the enteric nervous system. Enteric meaning gut or GI, digestion, however you want to look at that. Okay. Nervous system, nerves. Okay. We have two different plexuses that are subsets of this nervous system, the enteric nervous system. So you could break this enteric nervous system down into the submucosal plexus and the myenteric plexus. I have heard of this one, so you guys should probably know it. The myenteric plexus is also called the Auerbach's plexus. Okay, so you might see it one of two ways in the book, in your readings. Maybe, I haven't looked in the questions yet, but maybe on the final. Okay, so let's look at a picture. Okay, this is, someone tell me what we're looking at. And when I say tell me, I mean think in your head, what the hell am I looking at? Okay, we're looking at the end of the esophagus. Okay, so this view that we're looking at is if someone was lying down, we are looking up from their feet, and we would see right here the bottom of the diaphragm. There are three things that punch through the diaphragm. One of them is the esophagus to get down the stomach. The other is the aorta. The other is the vena cava. Okay, so if you didn't know that, now you do. Okay, all right, but in any case, the esophagus, as well as the rest of the digestive tract, is made up of like 4 different layers. Okay, so on the very outer layer, we have what we call the serosa. The serosa is the same thing as the peritoneum. And I know you guys have heard that word before in 201. Okay, so it's the peritoneum. We're going to look at it and we're going to talk about it here in a few slides, apparently. But it's the serous membrane, which is why they call it the serosa. If you saw it in real life, it's like this shiny, silvery looking, smooth tissue. Okay, so we have the serosa. Then, so that's most superficial. Deep to that, we have our muscular layer. Okay, so in our esophagus, we've only got 2 types. Not types. It's all smooth muscle, but they go in different directions. Okay. So we have the circular layer, which, remember, pushes things down. Well, the longitudinal does as well, but circular layer is really squeezing the stuff. Remember, we talked about once we swallow the bolus of food, when it's in the esophagus, think of the snake. Okay. So anything behind the bolus of food, or more superior or retrograde is the word that I use, it's going to constrict and push that food down. Okay, we have the longitudinal layer, which is going to help kind of shorten little segments of the esophagus to help the push the food down as well. Okay, but in any case, this is called the muscularis externa layer, made up of 2 layers of muscle, circular and longitudinal. When we go into the stomach, it's going to look a little bit different. Okay, then deep to that, we have this submucosal layer. Okay, this is a tan brown, beige looking color, okay, is all of this right here. And please remember, this is a tube, right? So the cut that they gave you looks a little bit different than down here, but they had to retract some layers to give you an idea of where these plexuses are coming through, okay? And then deep to the submucosa, please remember submucosa is, think of it like the connective tissue layer, okay? And then deep to that, we have the lumen, or the actual mucosa, okay? This is going to be your stratified epithelium that's in here, okay? So please remember, it's always stratified because it needs to be protective against food, acid, anything foreign that you swallow, anything like that, okay? All right, so if we look, we've got our two different plexuses right here. The myenteric plexus, aka the Auerbach's plexus. When you see the word myenteric, I want you to think my as myo. Myo is muscle. Okay, so myoenteric, I know there's not an O, but this is how I remember it. Okay, myoenteric, between the muscular layers. So if this is our longitudinal layer here, this is our circular layer here, we've got a whole nervous system running in between these two layers to make this function. Okay, we also have the submucosal plexus, which is going to be found in the submucosa. Okay, so if you look here, this gray, tan, whatever color this is, right? We're going to find that plexus in the submucosa. This is one's going to help with secretion more. Okay? Okay, hopefully I explained that okay. It's so weird you guys not being here and not knowing if everyone is comprehending, but I'm going to assume you all are very smart and we're going to continue on. Okay, so we also have different same neural reflexes with the enteric nervous system, okay? But we have another subset of short and long, okay? So when you think short reflexes, yes, it says intrinsic, but I want you to think happening in the stomach, happening like right at the site, if that makes sense. Okay, long reflexes, something's going to happen and now it's going to send a really long message, not long message, but a long distance to the brain. And then the brain is going to send a message back down to say, hey, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, so short is going to be at the site. So let's just say the stomach. Okay, it could be the esophagus as well, but in any case, so short reflexes, and then long reflexes going up to the brain. Okay, so I'll read the slide. Short reflexes, if you remember nothing else, remember this: caused by stretching or local chemical stimulation. So at the site. That should make sense. When we eat food, right? The esophagus is going to stretch. The stomach's going to stretch. Everything's going to stretch because we put something in it. It has to stretch. It's like a balloon filling with air. Okay? This short reflex will control just small segments of the digestive tract, just at that site. Okay? The long reflex, aka extrinsic, okay, involves the central nervous system. This is a higher level of control of digestive and glandular activities. If you look at the picture, the activities, the activities are the same. It's just going through the central nervous system and is caused by something different. Okay, so please remember I said digestion begins when we see food, smell food, hear about food, taste food, right? This stimuli, which should make sense because it's going through all of our senses, which happen at the brain, right, is going to stimulate the central nervous system, stimulate the brain. This stimulation is going to send the information down to the nerve, not the nervous system, the gut, right, our enteric nervous system, and say, hey, I need you to secrete and I need you to move. Okay, so again, different stimuli. Okay, fine. To the brain, that's going to send a message down to our enteric nervous system and say, hey, please activate our smooth muscle. And then, this is contractility here, but also secrete. Okay. Our internal or our local or our short reflexes is going to happen because of some sort of change at that site, whether it's esophagus or stomach. It's usually stomach. Okay. But in any case, chemoreceptors, right? When we think chemoreceptors, we think of chemicals. I want you guys to be thinking of pH. pH in your stomach is very, very low. It's like a 1. Okay. When we add food to it, it's going to get higher. That change in the pH is going to be like, okay, we got to do something now. There's food in here. Okay. We also have the mechanoreceptors, which is the stretch reflexes or the stretch receptors, right? Like I said, if you add something to something, it's filling up, it's stretching out. That stretch is going to then stimulate the myenteric plexus to do its job. Okay. We also have not just the enteric nervous system, but we have hormonal regulation of the digestive tract. Okay. There are some important ones on here that I'm going to point out to you. Some of them you know already, some of them you don't. Okay. But let's read the slide first. Okay. So there are at least 18 peptide hormones that affect most aspects of digestive function, which is very true. Activities of other systems. Okay. They are produced by enteroendocrine cells. Entero gut endocrine hormone. If you see that word, that's what that means. Please know that you're dealing with hormones. Okay. These reach target organs after distribution in the bloodstream. Like I said, please remember endocrine hormones get secreted into the blood. Exocrine hormones get secreted into a duct. Okay. All right. So a few of these hormones, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later on, but I'm just going to point some of them out to you right now. Okay. Number 1, cholecystokinin. It's this first one right here. Okay. Cholecystokinin is very important for gallbladder contraction. We're going to talk about the gallbladder. At least I hope. I haven't looked yet. Important for gallbladder contraction, which helps to dump bile into the small intestine so we can absorb fat or emulsify our fats even further. Okay. Then helps to stimulate gastrointestinal motility. Motility meaning movement. Okay. Also helps to stimulate pancreatic exocrine secretion. So all of our enzymes, amylase, lipase, and pepsinogen, which we're going to talk about. Okay. Then we have ghrelin. Okay. Ghrelin is released from the stomach, and I want you to think, this is how I remembered it. Ghrelin is like grr, like your stomach is growling. Your stomach is hungry. Okay. So ghrelin is released when you're hungry, or that's the signal to say, hey, I'm hungry. Okay. So ghrelin, growl. Please don't make fun of me, but you can. Okay. Then we have gastrin. Okay. Gastrin, so important, secreted by the stomach. We're going to talk about it in just a little bit. It makes our stomach acid. Without our stomach acid, we are not doing much. And you're going to see why here in just a moment. Okay. Then we talked about insulin and glucagon. Please remember these have to do with raising and lowering blood sugar. Glucagon will raise your blood sugar. Insulin will lower your blood sugar. Okay. All of these down here, the incretin hormones, they actually have to do with insulin release. Okay. Motilin has to do with motility, and the other ones we're not really worried about, but they are very interesting. Okay. So please know hormones everywhere, all over the place, involved in digestive function. So like I said, digestive tract is one of my favorites because it's my favorite, and then also sometimes not, because there's so many things that could be wrong, that could be the cause of something. And so it can get a little muddled and like frustrating because you're like, I'm trying to think of all these things. But in any case, it could be an enzyme. It could be a hormone. It could be the nervous system, right? So many different things that could go wrong. So please keep that in mind when you're speaking to your patients. That's why medicine is so hard sometimes, because it could be so many things. But in any case, it's really fun. Okay. All right, so this slide is just showing you exactly what we just talked about, just in a different form, okay? So if you follow it, it will kind of tell you what is happening where. So number 1, local factors, like I said, we've got a change in the pH. It's going to increase, which is going to be like, hey, we need to secrete some stuff in order to make our pH lower and to digest the food. And also it's stretched, okay? So couple of things these local factors are going to do. 1, it's going to send a signal to the myenteric plexus right here at this site to say, hey, we need peristalsis, we need segmentation, and we also need to secrete. It's also going to send a signal up to the nervous system, and the nervous system is going to say, hey, we need to do the same exact thing. And you're like, why both? It's a fail-safe, I'm assuming, okay? The more, the merrier. Please remember, the nerves that are involved here are going to be glossopharyngeal, cranial nerve number 9, and your vagus nerve, cranial nerve number 10. Okay, please remember parasympathetic, rest and digest. Then these local factors are also going to activate our enteroendocrine cells, enterogut endocrine hormone. Hormones are going to be released into the bloodstream, and like we looked at on this slide, this isn't even all of them. There are so many, and they all do different things. So they'll be released thrown into the stomach. I'm just going to say we're in the stomach now. Okay. Thrown into the stomach. I think we're technically in the esophagus because there's still only 2 layers of muscle. Regardless. Thrown into the esophagus. It's not the esophagus. Thrown into the stomach. Okay. And then the hormones will do what they need to do to the food, basically. Okay. So these are a lot of words. You guys can read the words. If you have questions, let me know. Okay. Ooh, of course, too far. All right. Now we're going to talk about the peritoneum. So we just talked about the 2 controls over digestive function, which was neural and hormonal. Now we're going to talk about the peritoneum and kind of what is surrounding everything. So we're switching from a little bit of physiology to more anatomy here. Okay. So please remember the peritoneum is that serous membrane. Okay. And the serous membrane is all connected. We have the parietal peritoneum and the visceral peritoneum. Okay. Parietal peritoneum is going to line the body cavity, line the wall. Your visceral peritoneum is going to line the organs. It is all one and the same. It is all the same sheet of stuff. It is all connected to each other. It's just touching different things. Okay? So the purpose of the peritoneum is to produce a lubricating liquid so that way things don't get stuck together and they can also move as they need to. Okay? So please remember everything is moving pretty much all of the time inside of us. Okay? And we need it to be able to move smoothly. This peritoneum helps it do that. Okay. We're going to talk about mesentery. Okay. Mesentery, we're going to see a picture. I'm going to show you a picture. But what I want you to think, the definition of mesentery right now, okay, is the blood vessels smashed in between the 2 peritoneums. Okay. We're going to look at a picture. It's very nutty. It's very cool. Again, if you can get to anatomy lab, please do so. It's very, very cool. Okay. Mesentery, vessels smashed in between our 2 layers of peritoneum. Okay. All right. Peritoneum, I'll just give a little tidbit here since you're all be going into nursing, can get infected. And we call that peritonitis. Okay. Peritonitis is an inflammation or an infection of the actual peritoneum. So let's say I was going to say a stab wound, but maybe it wasn't a stab wound. Let's say someone got impaled by something disgusting and dirty and full of like just bacteria, right? If it goes through their gut and it hits the peritoneum can become infected that way. You can also get peritonitis by a rupture or a perforation in the bowel. Okay, please remember our bowel is our large intestine, holds our feces. If our feces dumps into our abdominal cavity, now we have all that bacteria and yuck floating around inside of us where it should not be. And so thus it's going to infect the peritoneum. Okay, anyone with peritonitis, they're going to have severe abdominal pain. Severe. I cannot express how painful it's going to be. Severe abdominal pain. Okay. And also you guys are going to be learning like physical exam and like palpating and what you'll be touching and all that good fun stuff. So if you guys ever just like touch on your stomach, and don't flex your abs because that's not what we're talking about here. Just touch your stomach and push on it. It's like soft and squishy no matter what, right? Everyone's got a soft and squishy abdomen. If someone's got peritonitis, it's going to be hard, and not like they're flexing their abdomen hard, like hard. Okay. So you're going to have a hard time pushing on it. It's not going to go in, right? Like I'm pushing on mine right now. It's not going to go in. It's just like, it's going to be like a wall basically. Okay. So just some tidbits for you, as you go forth in your career. Okay. Listen, I say all this with love. Peritonitis is horrible. Anything anyone is sick with is horrible. And at the same time, I hope you guys get to see it all because it's fascinating. Okay. All right. Now we're going to talk about the stomach. So we moved out of the esophagus, moved into the stomach. Please remember your myenteric plexus, hormones, all of that is all throughout the digestive tract. Maybe not the colon, but in any case, definitely stomach, definitely small intestine. Okay. The stomach, now again, more anatomy. Okay. Peritoneum is covering everything. So your stomach is covered by peritoneum, intestines are covered by peritoneum, spleen, all that. Okay. So we've got the stomach shaped like a J. Wonderful. Okay, we've got a couple parts that we're going to go over. Okay, the first thing I want to do, well, we'll go over gross anatomy, meaning just what does it look like. Okay, so we've got the esophagus here. Right down here where the esophagus meets the stomach, we've got the lower esophageal sphincter. That's the sphincter that opens and closes to allow food to pass into the stomach. Please remember GERD is associated with that. Okay. Once it enters the food, okay, it's called a bolus at this point. Once it enters, it's going to enter into this first part called the cardia, okay? They call it the cardia because it's apparently closest to the heart, whatever. It's the first part of the stomach, cardia right here, okay? Then we have this upper part right here. We call that the fundus, okay? Most of this right here is the body, okay? So cardia, fundus, body. When we get down here, now we switch to a different name and we call it the pylorus. Okay? So cardia, fundus, body, pylorus. Okay? The pylorus is this space right here. We've got the pyloric antrum. Okay? Pyloric, now think of antrum as just like a waiting space, basically. Okay? Pyloric canal right here. The canal is going to lead into the duodenum. There is a sphincter right here. The duodenum is the first part of your small intestine. Okay. So we've got this passageway right here from the stomach to the small intestine. It's regulated by the pyloric sphincter. So we've got yet another sphincter. I want you guys to think about why we have sphincters. Why would we need a sphincter from the stomach to the small intestine? I'll let you guys think on that for a moment. Okay. We've also got different muscular layers. So please remember I said in the esophagus we have two. We just have the circular and we have the longitudinal. Okay. Now in the stomach, we've got an extra layer, the oblique layer. Okay. So our four layers of like mucosa, submucosa, muscularis externa, and the serosa, all the same, except for, this is one of those things that's a little bit different. We have 3 muscular layers, not 2. Okay. We also have these rugae, which is the next slide. Okay. Which the next slide does a way better job of explaining this, but rugae, we're going to talk about that. Okay. So we also have the lesser curvature, which is just this part right here. And we also have the greater curvature, which is this part right here. Okay. Please know that the stomach has a lot of blood supply, which should make sense. Lots of blood supply, and it's coming from different places, which is why we give everything a specific name. This is the lesser curvature because it has a different blood supply than the greater curvature. So we can't just say the stomach is supplied by this and that. We have to say where it's supplying to. Okay? Okay, I think I got them. All right, let's talk about the rugae, the inside of the stomach. This is what it looks like. So nutty, so weird. Please remember, I said, anytime you think there's an extra fold or an extra weird squiggly, it's to increase surface area. Okay? So we're going to talk about functions of the stomach apparently coming up. But the stomach, we got 3 layers of muscle. Its main job is to churn and churn and churn and start to break things up. The more the food can come into contact with the stomach lining and the things that the stomach is secreting, the better we're going to break it down. Okay, so this is what rugae look like. Squiggles, squiggles, squiggles. Looks like worms in my humble opinion. Okay, all right, let's talk about functions of the stomach. If you remember nothing, I want you to remember that the stomach is just a sac. It is a sac for holding food. That is it. That's a little bit basic, but in any case, right? There's really no absorption. Honestly, there's kind of minimal chemical digestion happening in there, okay? Its job is just mechanically mush things up, okay? It does have one special function, but without this function, like we literally don't need a stomach. Did you guys know that? We don't need it. We could totally live without it. Now, things would look very different regarding like intake of food and all that good fun stuff and the types of food you would need to intake. But you can live without a stomach. Okay? So, 4 functions. Number 1, storage of ingested food. It's just the place that holds our food that we ate. So nutty. Okay? Then we have mechanical breakdown of food. Okay? how they ask the question here, it's through the muscular layers. Okay, so remember, the stomach is going to squeeze in all sorts of different directions, and this is going to churn the food to break it up. Oh, one thing I need to mention. Okay, so once the bolus of food starts to mix with stomach acid, it's now called chyme, Chyme. Okay, so mechanical breakdown of food, squish, squish, squish. Okay. Disruption of chemical bonds in food by acids and enzymes. Please, if you didn't know, now you know. Hydrochloric acid, stomach acid, is like the main component of the stomach. Yes, it has a very important function, but again, not needed. Okay? Then we have, this is important, the production of intrinsic factor. Okay? Intrinsic factor is a protein that is responsible to help absorb vitamin B12. Okay? B12 is necessary for the production of red blood cells. So I want you to think about this. If we don't have intrinsic factor, we cannot absorb B12, and thus we cannot make red blood cells. What is the pathology that comes along with not producing red blood cells? I'll give you a moment. The answer is anemia. Okay. And it's a particular type of anemia. So please know you can get anemia from multiple different things. It's not just iron, which is what most people think, right? But it could be because you have a deficiency of B12. Could be you have a deficiency of B9, which is folate. Okay. Could be that you don't have enough iron. Sure. Could be that you don't have intrinsic factor. Could be that you are bleeding. Could be all sorts of different things, right? So please keep that in mind. I'm so sorry about the dog. This always happens when I do this. It never fails. Okay. So please just remember, anemia can come from many different things. When you think anemia, you're thinking fatigue, you're thinking bruising, you're thinking cold, right? Like all these different things, symptoms that people can have, okay? All right. Okay, we did that. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the different types of cells that are in the stomach that secrete different things, okay? So please remember, functions of digestive tract, they're regulated or controlled by nerves and also hormones, okay? So these are the different things that get secreted based off of either hormonal input or nervous system input, okay? Different types of cells of the stomach. Here, if you look at this picture, they took this little section of the stomach and they blew it up for you. So this is what it looks like, okay? So let's start from the most superficial, so the most outside of the stomach, and work our way in. We have the serosa, the peritoneum, same, okay? Then we have the muscular layer. Muscularis externa, because there is this little muscular layer in here. Okay, fine. We've got our longitudinal, circular, and oblique. Don't forget that. Then we have the submucosa. This is where our lacteals are. This is where arteries, capillaries are up here. Arteries, veins, right? Capillaries are going to run up in here, which should make sense because they're running right next to the cells of the stomach. Okay, all right. So in the mucosa, okay, so this is the very innermost layer, we've got something called gastric pits, right? So here's the rugae, and then in between these rugae, we have these little pits. These pits are lined with different types of cells. So we'll come over here, okay? At the very top of these pits, we have cells that produce mucus, okay? Why would we need mucus in our stomach? Seems gross, but necessary. Take a moment, think about it. I'm going to take a sip of coffee. Okay, I hope you answered. We make mucus to actually line and coat the stomach lining, the mucosa, okay? We need this lining of mucus to help protect against the acid. Acid likes to erode things. If we didn't have the mucus, our stomach would just erode and we wind up with a giant hole in it, which is not what we want, okay? And we're going to talk about that. Anybody know what that's called when you have a giant hole in your stomach? That is not the way to say that. But in any case, that's how I'm going to say it. It's called an ulcer. Okay. So when something's wrong with the mucus or something makes the mucus not work or erodes or breaks down the mucus, which we'll talk about, you wind up with an ulcer. Okay. Ulcers are no fun. If anyone has had one, please share your experience. Okay. So anyways, at the top, we've got this mucus secreting cells, okay, to help protect the lining of the stomach. Then we go down further into the pit, and we've got these three very special types of cells. We've got parietal cells, G cells, and chief cells. I want you guys to know these like the back of your hand, okay? So, okay, this is just saying the same thing. Next slide. Okay, parietal cells, okay? Parietal cells are responsible for the secretion of HCl, hydrochloric acid, our stomach acid. Okay? They also are responsible for secreting intrinsic factor. Please remember, intrinsic factor carries B12 so that it can be absorbed. If we don't have intrinsic factor, we cannot absorb B12. If we can't absorb B12, then we can't make red blood cells, and thus we get anemic. No bueno. Okay. There is a special subset of the population that needs to ingest a supplemental form of B12, whether it's through injection or through sublingual, or through an already activated form in a like pill form of supplement. Does anyone know? I know you're not here, but in any case, let's think. The answer is vegans. Okay. Vegetarians too? Okay. Yes, vegetarian. Okay. In any case, do vegetarians eat eggs? I should know this. I'm not a vegan or a vegetarian. Oh, no. Okay. So I feel like if it was an ovo vegetarian, then they would eat eggs. So regular vegetarians, none of the subsets of vegetarians would need B12 as well. Okay. So B12 is found mostly in meat and dairy and eggs. Okay. So if you're vegan, vegetarian, you're not eating those things, right? You need to take some sort of form of B12, activated B12, so that way you can make your red blood cells. B12 is responsible for a lot of other things in the body, but that's like kind of the main one. Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about hydrochloric acid production and how it happens. This should look familiar to you because it is the same exact thing we saw in the lungs. Okay. So we've got CO2 with H2O. They go, carbonic anhydrase kind of mishmashes them together, and now they have made carbonic acid. Okay. We don't want carbonic acid. We want just hydrogen. Hydrogen is our acid. Okay. So this carbonic acid is going to be broken down just like in the lungs into bicarbonate, which is HCO3, and hydrogen. Okay. This bicarb is going to get shunted into the interstitial fluid, the fluid in between the tissues. Okay. Please remember, it's a negative charge, and we can't just go willy-nilly throwing charges around. It's going to throw off the whole homeostatic nature of that cell. So if we lose a charge, meaning a negative charge goes out, we got to put a negative one back in. This is just like the lungs. So now we're putting a chloride in. Okay, so chloride comes into the cell to keep the cell balanced. Okay, this hydrogen is going to get pushed out into the lumen of the stomach. Lumen of the stomach. Let's go back. Let's go back. The lumen, this space of the stomach. Okay, that's what we want. Hydrochloric acid, HCl. Okay. Okay, so that's how it's working. I would definitely know this. I hope you guys already know it from the lung, but if you don't, review it here. And please remember, this is happening in the parietal cell. Parietal cells make hydrochloric acid. They also make intrinsic factor. Okay? Oh, okay, PPIs. Okay, PPIs, very common medication. Probably everyone and their mom is on a PPI because people refuse to stop eating foods that give them heartburn. But in any case, PPIs are proton pump inhibitors. This is your proton pump. Okay. If you're taking a proton pump inhibitor, it will stop this action right here from pushing the hydrogen into the lumen of the stomach. Okay? That's how proton pump inhibitors work. This is how drugs work, right? They're usually stopping some sort of pump or some sort of hormone or some sort of enzyme. I'm trying to think of all the words. But that's how drugs really work. Okay, so it's blocking this right here. Here we go. Everyone and their mom, different types of PPIs. They're also called H2 blockers, which we don't really talk about histamine in here, but histamine is also important for the production, of acid. Okay. And histamine, it's a H2 because it's a different type of histamine, not what we think about when we have like an allergic reaction or anything like that. Different type of histamine, but necessary to make acid. Okay, so we can take an H2 blocker as well. And you guys are, I'm confident you're going to have to take pharmacology. They end in different names. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, so like Prevacid, Nexium, Prilosec, those are all brand names. But if you look here at this esomeprazole, okay, anything in AZOLE, or I think it's PRAZOLE. This is how you remember drugs, by the way. Anything ending in this is going to be a proton pump inhibitor. I don't remember off the top of my head about H2s because I don't give them, and I just try to get people off of them. But in any case, they exist. So when pharmacology comes, please remember, you're going to remember drugs and what they do based off of either the beginning or ending. Pharmacology is hard, guys. Okay. Next, we have our chief cells. Okay. Chief cells are the most abundant, and they're near the base of the gastric pit, or what we now call the gastric gland. One and the same. They're all connected. Okay. These secrete pepsinogen. Okay. Pepsinogen is what we call a proenzyme. Okay. Meaning it's in its inactive state. So we've got to add something to it to change its configuration to put it into its active state. Okay. So what happens is this chief cell will release pepsinogen. This pepsinogen will meet up with the hydrochloric acid and get converted into pepsin. Okay. Pepsin is the active form of the enzyme. It is the thing that's going to do the breaking down of, anyone want to guess which macromolecule? Proteins. I hope you said proteins. Okay. All right, so picture, I actually kind of like this picture. It's pretty good. Okay, so we've got our parietal cell here. We've got our HCl. We figured out that came from the conversion of CO2 and H2O, carbonic anhydrase, like smashed them together, made carbonic acid. This carbonic acid got broken down into HCO3, which is what? Bicarb, and then just a single hydrogen ion. This and the chloride got pumped down into lubin, and now we have hydrochloric acid. Okay. All right, so hydrochloric acid, okay? This hydrochloric acid, here, okay, so from parietal cell, we got hydrochloric acid. From our chief cell, we got pepsinogen. This pepsinogen, hydrochloric acid is going to mishmash with the pepsinogen. It's going to remove a peptide. Okay, fine. Now we've got the active enzyme of pepsin. This pepsin is going to take a dietary protein and it's going to partially digest the protein. So it's going to take it from these big long chains and start to break it down into smaller chains. These are called polypeptides. Okay. Please remember, once we've got a single peptide, it's called an amino acid, which is the most basic component, which is what we want to get it down to. Okay. Okay. Then we've got our G cells. Okay. G cells are a part of the enteroendocrine system. So it's going to release a hormone. Okay. Luckily, they decided to name it G cell. They use the letter, what am I trying to say? They use the first letter of the name of the thing that it secretes. Where is it? Where is it? Oh my gosh, here, gastrin. You guys know what I'm trying to say. Okay. All right. So G cells, very abundant. Okay. In the gastric pit, specifically in the pyloric antrum. So if we go back to, If we go back to our stomach, please remember the pylorus is this lower part here. The antrum is kind of right here, right here. Okay. So lots of G cells, lots of enteroendocrine cells in the pyloric antrum. That should make sense because we're getting ready to dump into the duodenum. Okay. Okay, so your G cells, they produce gastrin. Okay, gastrin is a hormone that stimulates stomach motility, so movement, mixing, churning, okay, and hydrochloric acid. Okay, so this cell right here is going to secrete something that is going to then stimulate this cell right here to make hydrochloric acid. Okay, parietal cells, don't forget that, it says from where. Okay, we also have D cells, which are not shown on this picture, but they release somatostatin. Please remember, if anything ends in the word statin, it is stopping something. Okay, so we'll release somatostatin. This is a hormone that inhibits the release of gastrin, which will shut off acid production. Okay. Okay. There are 3 phases to this gastric secretion and how it works and what is doing what. Okay, so this is just the regulatory mechanism of how these cells are functioning right here. Okay, 3 phases. We've got cephalic, gastric, and intestinal. And if you guys, I have to stretch, I'm so sorry. If you guys just read the words, it will tell you what is coming from where. Okay, so cephalic means what? Hopefully you said head. Okay, gastric means what? Hopefully you said stomach. Intestinal means what? Hopefully you said intestinal. Okay, so these phases of what's happening is basically just telling you, like, where's everything coming from? Where's the signal coming from? What's happening? Okay, all right. So in the cephalic phase, we're obviously going to have the brain involved. Cephalic means head. Okay, so what I want you to know, basic of basic, okay, is that your cephalic phase and your gastric phase are what we called stimulatory. Okay, meaning they're going to promote the action of that organ gland. Okay, they're going to stimulate the stomach to do what it needs to do, to secrete and to move. Okay, so if you read number 1, cephalic phase, the vagus nerve stimulates gastric secretion even before food is swallowed. So this is like I saw it, I smelled it, smells delicious, I thought about it, whatever. Okay, then we have the gastric phase where we actually put food into the stomach. Please remember, once food, the bolus of food mixes with acid, it is now called chyme. Okay, so I'm going to refer to this as chyme now. Okay, so the chyme will stretch the stomach, activates the myenteric reflexes. These reflexes will stimulate gastric secretion. So we've got intrinsic factor, hydrochloric acid, gastrin. Okay, histamine, like I said, also involved, and gastrin also stimulate acid and enzyme secretion, which I just said. Okay, all right, so we've mixed, we've churned, we're starting to chemically digest. Wonderful. Now our chyme has started to dump into the small intestine. So the stomach has done its job. We're pushing things down. Oh, the sphincter question. I asked you a sphincter question. Okay, anyway, let me continue. We push food down into the intestine. Okay, we do not want to dump all of our stomach contents into the small intestine at once. That is called dumping syndrome. That is no good in the sense, well, it's no good because we can't absorb and digest the food properly then. Please remember, we have this segmentation piece going on where things need to be broken down even smaller, even smaller, even smaller, even smaller. And if they're not, we don't get the proper result from it. Okay, so what's happening is, basic of basic, this chyme is now in the small intestine and is going to release secretin and CCK, this cholecystokinin. These hormones are going to turn off the secretion of gastrin. So no more acid is being produced because we're starting to move things down further along the line. Okay. Also at this time, the sympathetic nervous system is going to kick in and it's going to block parasympathetic. So basically it's saying, like, hey, stop resting and digesting. Okay. You guys can read all the words there if you want to, but please remember the intestinal phase largely is an inhibitory phase of function of the stomach. Okay. All right. I think this is just some facts, fun stuff. Okay. So digestion in the stomach, when full, can contain 1 to 1.5 liters of material. It's a lot. Again, same as the amount of saliva that we produce. Stomach performs preliminary digestion of proteins by pepsin. Please remember, there is no digestion of proteins in the mouth. They start to be digested in the stomach, but only in a preliminary fashion. This is not the end all be all. Okay, we have much more to do in the small intestine. Some digestion of carbohydrates happens here only because we swallow our salivary amylase. So that amylase is still going to work on the carbohydrates that were in our mouth. And then also same with the lingual lipase. Okay? So the stomach is the first site where all three will start to be digested. Protein not in the mouth. Okay. All right. So stomach contents, they become more fluid, which should make sense. The pH approaches 2. This is a thing that's high for the stomach when food gets in, right? So this is going to be that short messaging signal to the myenteric plexus to say, hey, we need to start releasing stuff because there's stuff in here, okay? Pepsin activity increases to help the denaturation or the breakdown of proteins, and then protein disassembly begins because of the pepsin, okay? Although digestion occurs in the stomach, most nutrients are not absorbed here. I feel like you should mark that to none. There's nothing that absorbs nutrient-wise really in the stomach, except for alcohol and aspirin. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. Anyone ever take like an ibuprofen and you're just like, my stomach hurts? I have, and this is why, okay? I don't know if you guys have ever, if you know, or if you've read the boxes or anything like that. But if you take too much Advil, ibuprofen, there's another brand name, but I don't remember it right now. If you take too much, you can actually destroy your stomach lining and you get an ulcer. Okay, because it's breaking down the mucus. Other than that, I don't really know the mechanism of action other than it just destroys a lining and you wind up getting an ulcer. So you'll see if you look on the boxes or whatever, it might say like, don't take on an empty stomach. And also you shouldn't take a certain amount in one day for longer than a certain period of time because you'll wind up getting an ulcer. Okay, speaking of that, let's go back real quick because you're going to see ulcers. Okay, and I want you guys to think about... here to our mucus secreting cells. Okay, so please remember I said at the top of these pits we have mucus being secreted. The mucus is there to line the stomach. Okay, there is a bacteria, anyone know it, that causes ulcers. Oh, where are we at? It's called H. pylori, Helicobacter pylori. Okay, this little bugger has a whip, a tail on the back of it. It's so annoying. Has a tail on the back of it that allows it. Okay, so like the front of this bacteria has something that allows it to survive the acid of our stomach first and foremost. Okay, then this little guy will take its silly little tail and use it to like drive its face into the stomach lining. I know this is like a terrible visual, but in any case, that's what it's doing, right? This tail or whip that I think it's called a flagelli on the back of it, it like rotates like a propeller and it helps it to drive itself into the stomach lining and it makes us have ulcers. It's so annoying. But in any case, it's a bacteria. It's like the most common cause of ulcers right now, apparently. And it's very common. Okay. So it's a bacteria. So think about how you would treat that. Most people would say antibiotic. I would say something else, but you're not wrong if you say antibiotic because it's a bacteria. Okay. And I just want to tell you guys about that because you're going to see a lot. You're going to see lots of ulcers and all that good fun stuff. Okay. Okay. Food's usually held in the stomach 2 to 4 hours. Okay, wonderful. All right. And that's the stomach. Quickly, we're going to do the small intestine. Okay. We're going to start here and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the small intestine because it's fascinating. Okay. So small intestine, right? So from the stomach over here, right? We've mixed, we've churned, we've released some hormones, we've released some acid, we've started to break down some stuff. Okay, now that stuff is ready to be dumped into the small intestine for further digestion and absorption. Okay, Please remember, it passes through this pyloric sphincter. Oh, I asked you about the sphincter. I said, why will we need a sphincter here? I already gave you the answer. But hopefully you said, because we don't want all of the contents of the stomach to dump into the intestine at once. That is not good for us. It does not help with anything. It actually makes things worse by way of absorption and then also defecation. So the sphincter opens and closes, opens and closes, opens and closes to let a small amount of chyme pass through at specific intervals. Okay, so now we've passed through to the first part of the small intestine. I think we're just going to do a little bit of anatomy here real quick, and then maybe we get into absorption. I think that's what happens. But in any case, okay, please know this is the site where all of our accessory organs are dumping their stuff. Okay, so don't forget about the pancreas. Don't forget about the gallbladder. Okay, so gallbladder is going to dump bile here. Pancreas is going to dump more amylase, more lipase, more protease, all that good fun stuff to help further break down our food. I don't know why it doesn't say here, but regardless, okay? So small intestine, it's a long, narrow, convoluted tubules tube, okay? 90% of nutrient absorption occurs in the small intestine. Most, just say all. Okay, divided into 3 parts. We got the first part, and they each do a different thing, which is why they're divided into 3 parts. Okay, we've got the duodenum, which is this blue part right up here. Okay, lots of digestion still occurring here. Then we've got jejunum, and then we've got ileum. Lots of absorption happening in these parts. Okay, I've never seen it, and I don't know, but I'm so curious about when they do any type of surgery on the abdomen. Like, what do they do with the organs? Like, do they, like, specifically intestines? I'm like, do you guys just like pick them up and then put them back in? I've yet to watch a YouTube video, but I'm always so fascinated by it. I'm like, what if you get a kink? If you get a kink, you get backed up, and that's not good either. So I'm very interested in that. If anybody knows, please tell me. Okay. All right. This is the mesentery. Okay, so remember I said the serosa, the peritoneum is what it's called in the abdomen. Okay, it's slick, it's silvery, it's smooth, right? It's got all of these vessels in it. Okay, so please remember I said the mesentery is just vessels smashed between the serosa. Okay, this is another good picture here. This is what it looks like. Nutty. Okay, in any case, very vascular. Why? Why? This is so interesting. I feel like this is, what is this, spleen? Looks like a spleen. It looks like liver, but that wouldn't make any sense because they're not on the same side. Okay. I don't know what view we're looking at here, but in any case, very interesting to me. What was I saying? Oh, why so vascular? Okay. Hopefully you said because this is where all of the absorption is taking place. Okay, we need all this blood to absorb the nutrients. That's how nutrients get into our body. Okay, good. Let's see what this is. Okay, more anatomy. Small intestine is the largest part of the gastrointestinal tract. We've got the first part, duodenum, which is about 1 foot long. We've got the jejunum, 8.2 feet long, and then the ileum, 11.5 feet long, for a total of about 20 feet of small intestine. That is a lot. Okay. We got different secretions. Oh, it did say, okay, good. Okay. So, lots of different secretions happening. Okay. So I want you to always come back to this picture if you need to. So here is our stomach. Here is the chyme. Okay. So they just took away like the actual lining of the stomach, and now we're just looking at chyme. Okay. So we've got chyme. This chyme is dumping into the duodenum. Okay. Notice here from the liver, we've got the gallbladder and the liver. Okay, fine. Okay. We're going to talk about the gallbladder. We've got, it comes here and dumps right into the duodenum. We also got pancreas and all of its exocrine enzymes are dumping here right into duodenum. This is going to help further digestion. Okay. This is our watery intestinal juice. Yum. There's about 1.8 liters per day that enter the intestinal lumen. It moistens the chyme, assists in buffering acids. Okay, so please remember from the stomach, well, this was very acidic still, right? We don't want that traveling all the way down our intestines. So we've got lots of buffering happening here to offset that acid. Okay, and then also keep digestive enzymes and products of digestion in a solution. Everything is water. Everything is mishmash in here. Okay, all right. Some more anatomy. Okay, we've got villi and microvilli. This is a great picture. I love, love, love this picture. Okay, but in any case, again, here's a cell of the intestine. Oh, I'm sorry. Here, no. This is one cell of the intestinal lining. Okay, so this would be the epithelium. Okay, on the small intestine, we have villi. Okay, these are folds and folds and squigglies and folds. Please remember, anytime there's an extra fold, you're like, why does it look like a worm? It's to increase surface area. Okay, so villi, we've got finger-like projections, which increase surface area of the small intestine, right? Because we want all that fluid touching all of this so we can digest it more, break it down more, and then also absorb it, okay? But even on top of our villi, we have something called microvilli. So you see this picture here? This is a villi. Villus, I think, is the singular. Oh, it is, look. Villus right here, okay? On top of this, we also have microvilli. So even more projections, more squigglies, more, I call it finger-like projections on top to increase surface area. Okay, that should make sense to you. If we don't have our small intestine, we're dead, right? Because we're not absorbing anything. We can't get anything into our body. So we need this to be as much surface area as possible. So when stuff floats by, we can grab it and put it into our body. Okay, so microvilli, plasma membrane extensions of the villi. Okay, fine. Increased surface area. Great. These contain brush border enzymes. Okay, we're going to talk about these brush border enzymes because they're very, very important. This slide doesn't do it justice, but we're going to try. Okay, all right. Different brush border enzymes. Okay, these are different than what is secreted by your pancreas. These only stay in this spot. They don't travel. They don't go anywhere. They're literally just at that site. Okay. Oh, they are not secreted. Okay, what that means is, the chyme must contact the brush border for the action to occur. If nothing brushes by them, then they don't do anything and they don't move anywhere. Okay, this is called contact digestion. So we've got sucrase, maltase, lactase, and enteropeptidase. Okay, please remember I said anything that ends in ASE is an enzyme. Enzymes are responsible for catalyzing conversions of things, either one way or another. Okay, so these catabolize is to break down carbohydrates. Okay, so like I said, we got sucrase, maltase, and lactase. This question is saying what happens if one of them is missing. The answer is then you can't break that down, and then it can't be absorbed because they're not in their single components. Okay, so please remember for carbs, we said it's monomer or it's monosaccharide, meaning one sugar. Okay, everything needs to be a singular in order to be absorbed. We cannot do 2, 3, 4, or 87. It has to be one. Okay, so let's start with maltose. Okay, maltose is going to break down two glucose molecules stuck together. Right? So we call this, I'll let you guys think about it. Okay. We call it maltose. What am I saying? Anyway, maltose is made up of two glucoses stuck together. So it goes through the enzyme maltase, or maltase acts on it and breaks each of these sugars apart. And now we just have glucose floating around. Okay. Lactose, you guys have all heard of lactose, milk sugar. Okay. It's made up of a galactose, that's this square right here, and a glucose. So lactase is going to act on lactose and break apart the galactose and the glucose. Now each of those can be absorbed. Sucrose is a glucose molecule and a fructose molecule. So this is going to be like from our fruits, okay? We use sucrase to break this sucrose apart. Now we've got a glucose and a fructose, and now those can be absorbed as they need to, okay? Over here, this is just telling you this process that it goes through is called hydrolysis. They put it on here, so I would probably know it, okay? In that a water molecule is added, and that helps to break these two apart because, anyway, okay, not my favorite, okay? Oxygen's moving, hydrogen's moving, bleh. Anyway, okay? So Then we have enteropeptidase, which this is not the only thing it does, but this is the only one they're showing you. It converts trypsinogen, which is inactive, to trypsin, which is active. This helps to further break down proteins. Okay? I would definitely know this slide very, very well. Okay? All right. In the small intestine, we have intestinal crypts, just like in the stomach. Okay? These are tubular glands that open into the intestinal lumen. They contain all of the cells that secrete all of the things. Okay? So, intestinal crypts are different than your brush border enzymes. Your brush border enzymes are going to sit on these microvilli. Okay? Your crypts are going to be all of this right here. Okay? So, please know different parts of the small intestine. Okay? Okay. These contain the enteroendocrine cells, so they're going to secrete hormones, okay, like gastrin, which is responsible for the production of hydrochloric acid, cholecystokinin, also responsible for the production of acid and motility, and secretin, okay. Then we have duodenal glands, okay. Please remember, we're in the duodenum now, so that should make sense to you. These are also called Brunner's glands. They produce copious quantities of mucus. Should make sense because it's still acidic. The chyme is still acidic. We need mucus still to help protect. Okay? So this contains bicarb. Please remember, bicarb is a buffer that's going to help offset the acidity of the chyme. Okay? I think I'm going to save this slide. Oh, that's fine. Intestinal absorption. This is a very... I'm not sure what's supposed to be happening. I think this ball is supposed to be moving. But in any case, it takes about 5 hours for materials to pass from the duodenum to the end of the ileum. So it takes about 5 hours for complete digestion. That's not even a lie. Just for the chyme to pass from your duodenum to the ileum. Okay? You guys can watch these videos, which I think you should. They're fun to watch, in all honesty. Okay, so something I want to mention here, because it's important. Okay. All right. This is a cell. No, this is a cell, a small intestine cell. Okay. Next to this, we'll have another cell. And then we'll have another cell. And then we'll have another cell. And all of our intestinal cells are held together very tightly by, not gap junctions, by tight junctions, right? So they are very close together. Like nothing should be able to get through each individual cell. Like in between one cell and the other cell, okay? Everything should be absorbed into this capillary lacteal system right here, taken through the blood, taken to the liver, processed, back out to the body, okay? What can happen, I'm just going to use this picture. Please know this is not correct, but I'm just going to use this picture because you can see cells next to cells, okay? What can happen is something called leaky gut. I want you guys to know, in medicine, you may not hear this, but it's totally true. The gut is responsible for like so much of our health. So much of our health. You can do miracles for people, or people can do miracles for themselves, I should say, if they put in foods that are appropriate for them, right? So, some people don't do well with nuts, and I'm not talking anaphylaxis. I'm talking just like general inflammation in the body. Some people don't do well with dairy. Some people don't do well with wheat. Some people don't do well with green beans. Some people don't do well with corn, right? Meaning, not that they're going to have an anaphylactic reaction to that, but that it's causing inflammation in the body. This happens, okay? So when people consistently eat food that is not right for them, okay, what can happen is that these tight junctions in between these cells can start to separate. Okay, so when the cells separate, now you've got a hole in between one cell and another. And now stuff that can pass through. And when I say stuff, I mean stuff that's not ready to pass through. Okay, our body does a very good job at regulating what can get in and what can go out. When you've got this gap right here, anything can get in because there's really no regulation. Okay, so once things get in, right? It's still going into our cell. Well, here, if this is our intestine, it's going to be traveling back this way. Okay. It's still getting into our blood. It's still getting into our fluids, and it shouldn't be there. What happens when something gets into our body that shouldn't be there? I hope you said the immune system goes to war, because that is absolutely correct. Okay. So while a good thing, right? We want our immune system to be like, hey, you don't belong here. I need to trap you and get rid of you. At the same time, if stuff keeps coming in, keeps bombarding the system with the immune system is always on, the immune system is going to get confused, and it's going to look at your own tissues or something that looks similar to whatever it is that got in and say, hey, you don't belong here. And thus, an autoimmune disease is created. I want you guys to look into this because it is so nutty how it happens. Okay. A lot of times people are like, my immune system just doesn't work. No. Maybe, but no, that can't be for all the cases. A lot of the times it comes from the gut. So from my stance, when treating autoimmune conditions, the first thing you do is work on gut health, and you work on food, right? What food is not good for them. And you guys are thinking like, oh, maybe you're not, but you're thinking like, candy's not good for you, right? Like, it's not good for you. But I'm talking about everyday, like, foods that people would consider healthy for them. Sometimes they're not healthy for that person, right? So figuring out what's not agreeing with them, eliminating it, and then helping them fix this junction right here to close back up, so that way more stuff that shouldn't be getting in doesn't get in, helps to actually heal an autoimmune disease. It is nutty. Look it up. It's fun. And we can absolutely talk about more. Okay. But in any case, okay, that's it for today. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. I am so sorry about the internet. I don't know what's going on. It's literally, it says here that I'm connected, but I'm not. I've tried 800 million times. But in any case, hopefully this is okay. If you need anything, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you guys next Tuesday. Again, please be studying. We've got a Kahoot coming up, and it should be fun. So I will talk to you guys later, and have a great day.